طال ليل الردى وتمادى العدا وغدا الظلم في عصرنا سيدا طال ليل الردى وتمادى العدا وغدا الظلم في
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. Okay brothers, there you had a very short chronology of the Crusades, and really, you know, somebody like Salahudin, again, we can't speak about him in 45 minutes. It's unjust to just speak about everything that was related to him in just 45 minutes. But we can speak again, we can pick an aspect of his life. So today we are not going to discuss the Crusades and, you know, the type of battles that occurred and so on and so forth, but we have taken something from his personality. And some of the tapes that I used for this is a set of, again, there were a set of 4 tapes on Salahudin Ayyubi by one of the scholars. I forgot his name, I don't recall his name now, but one of the scholars, he compiled these tapes. And one side of one tape was about his personality, from which I've tried to take some benefits so that we can maybe reflect on that. So, first of all, who is Salahudin? What is his name? His name Sultan Salahudin. This is his name, Salahudin Abu al-Muzaffar Yūsuf ibn al-Amir Najmuddin Ayyūb ibn Shadi ibn Marwan ibn Yaqub ad-Duwaini then at-Takriti. He was born in the year 544 after Hijri, which corresponds to 1137 Christian era. And his father, whose name was Najmuddin, he used to love him as a boy. You know, Salahudin, he used to like him a lot. And he used to, it's recorded that he used to play ball with him as well. The historians, they recorded that he used to love his son, used to play ball with him. And from the early age, he sent Salahudin to the halaqat of ilm, to the study circles of knowledge with the scholars, until Salahudin, you know, he perfected the Arabic language, and he also became from the fuqaha, from the jurists of the Shafi'iyya, of the Shafi'i madhab. So he was a scholar in his right as well. He wasn't just a mujahid, but he was a scholar as well. And this is very important, because when a person, you know, he is waging a jihad, or any time he does an act of worship, he should be aware of all the rulings with regards to that act of worship. And if he is a mujahid or a commander, then he should be aware of all the aspects, that who is he allowed to kill, who is not allowed to kill, what are the rules governing peace, and what are the rules governing war, and so on and so forth. As for his characters, in terms of his mercy, one of the things that he did for the Muslims was that previous to him coming to power, the Fatimiyya dynasty, they imposed a lot of taxes on the Muslims. The Islamic State, or the Fatimiyya, they imposed many taxes. You know, even taxes for small things, buying, selling, you have to pay tax. You want to do anything you want to do, you have to pay a tax, and the tax would go to the government. So when Salahudin came, he removed, you know, most of these taxes to make it easy for the people. So he took away most of these taxes for the Muslims. In terms of his bravery, he used to accompany soldiers to the front line. He wouldn't just, you know, sit in the back in his tent and just give the orders, but he would be there with his armies at the front. And it's also narrated that during the siege of Akka, one night 70 ships of the Crusaders, they came between Asr and Maghrib. And Salahudin, he didn't like panic and think, oh, you know, the ships are coming, you know, let's run, let's do something. He saw the ships coming, and very peacefully, you know, he just counted them one by one, from Asr to Maghrib, 1, 2, 3, 4, until all 70 ships came of the Crusaders. Then the Muslims, they had a battle on that day with the Christians, and the Muslims, they had to make a tactical withdrawal. So Salahudin, he took the Muslims to the mountain. They regrouped on the mountain, and they came and attacked the Crusaders, and they won on the same day. And that day of that battle was a very, it was a very difficult day. And it's narrated that, it was rainy and it was windy, and he was in his tent, from where he was, commanding the battle as well, from his tent. And the historian who mentioned this, he said that, if you just think about it, that he was, at that time he was one of the leaders of the Muslims, and he could have been sitting back in his palace with his family, enjoying with his, with his wives, with his children, having expensive food. But he preferred to leave that and to go and live in that tent, on that rainy and windy night. That is what he got his pleasure from. And it said that it was so rainy and windy that some of his soldiers, they were even concerned that the tent might blow away, or fall down or something like that. So this shows, his bravery and how much he was like, he was a soldier in his own right as well. It wasn't just giving the orders. In terms of his patience, when his son Ismail died, and he received the news that his son Ismail died, he didn't tell anybody. He didn't express his grief to anybody. He didn't go to people and say, "Oh, my son's died, my son's died, my son's died." He didn't tell anyone, and he just contained his grief, within himself. And the only way that the people could see his sadness was, some tears that, came, that rolled down his face. But other than that, he didn't, that was the only way you could tell that he was hurt, or grieved by the death of his son. But from verbally, he didn't make any expression of his grief. And this is really these are really the characteristics of the real men. You see that, how their complaints and their sorrows, they are only to Allah, not to the creation. He was also, as a ruler, he was also very, very tolerant. And what used to happen is that, as the ruler of the Muslims, the people, they would come to him, as the governor of the Muslims, the people, they would come to him with their complaints. And you can imagine that, he is the ruler of the Muslims, and he's sitting down on his mat, and all these angry people, who are living in the country, the Muslims, they are coming to complain to him. So as the people, they are coming, some people, they're stepping on his clothes, some people, they're soiling, they're dirtying his carpet that he's sitting on. Some people, they're speaking to him rudely, because this is the ordinary people. He wasn't like living in his palace and saying, "Listen, if you want to speak to me, don't come to me directly, go to one of my ambassadors, and you make your complaint to him." No, you could come to him directly and make your complaint. So the people would come, and all types of people, some people being rude, some people don't know how to speak to him. And this type of behavior, you need a lot of patience for it. It's not easy. It is very difficult. If you are the Amir or the Khalifa, and people are coming to you and are accusing you of maybe some things that you haven't done. That, "Oh, you don't do this, you don't do that, you're being unjust, my family hasn't had this for this much time or that much time." And in the past, some of the Muslim rulers, you couldn't say that to them. If you dare say something like that to any one of, even today, if you go to any of the rulers in the Muslim countries and just speak your mind, nobody's going to hear about you, very soon. That'll be the end of you. But he used to listen very, very patiently. He used to listen quietly. Even if they dirtied his clothes, whatever, he'd just listen. "Okay, what have you got to say?" And he would, attend to everyone's affairs. Because he knew that as being the ruler of the Muslims, this is something that he will be answerable to Allah on the Day of Judgment. So he looked at it as a responsibility for which he is answerable, rather than, a high status with which he could look down upon the people. In terms of his chivalry, the English historian Mill, he narrates that when Al-Quds was captured, when Salahudin, he captured Jerusalem, the Crusaders who were who had to flee, they fled, and they went to the nearby city or country of Antioch. And that was also ruled by a fellow Christian, and they went to him, and they thought that, okay, that now we've gone to a fellow Christian country, they'll look after us. And what did the ruler of Antioch do? He saw these crusaders had come, they had just lost the battle of Jerusalem, they come to him asking for help. He robbed them, he took their own money. He was a Christian as well, he robbed them of their money and he kicked them out, all their wealth and all that, said, get out. So they started cursing this ruler. These Christians, they're thinking, look at this, we came to him, our fellow Christian brother, he stole our money, we're hungry, we're tired, and he treated us like this. And some of them, they were like starving, they had women, they had children, and their own ruler, he booted them out like that. So what did they do? They returned to Salahudin. And he looked after them, gave them, Muslim, hospitality, looked after them, attended to their needs, gave them food, whatever, they needed. Another Western historian, Stanley Lane Poole, he says that if the taking of Jerusalem were the only fact known about Saladin, they used to call him Saladin, it were enough to prove him the most chivalrous and great-hearted conqueror of his own and perhaps of any age. This is a non-Muslim. This was a disbeliever. This is what he's saying about Salahudin. It's not a Muslim, who saw Salahudin as a hero. This was a disbeliever. He was saying that if that was the only thing that we knew many things about him, but if we just knew that how he took Jerusalem, this was enough. Also, after one of the battles, what happened was that there was one woman, one of the Christian women, she was running through, through the crowds and crying, loudly, screaming and crying. So the Muslims, the soldiers, they went to her, they said, what's the problem? And she said, my young daughter, I've lost my daughter. So Salahudin, the news reached him, and he was very sad, because he saw that her daughter is lost. He didn't say, okay, she's just a Christian, who cares? But he became concerned, and he became very sad at this. So he told his soldiers, go and look for the daughter of this woman. So they went and they searched, and I think they found out that in one of the particular markets or whatever, that his daughter had been sold to some Muslim or something like that. So he went and he paid for, he paid the price of that daughter, and so that he was the owner of her, and then he released her free and gave her to her mum, and her mother became happy that she was reunited with her daughter. So these are like these are examples of which are very rare. So you see that on one hand he's the liberator of Jerusalem, he's the man who is striking terror into the hearts of the disbelievers, but at the same time he's the one who has got mercy, who is looking after the Christians when their own rulers, they turn the blind eye to them. Also his arch enemy, Richard the Lionheart of England, the King of England, when he was sick, when he was ill, Salahudin, he sent him fruits and snow, ice. They had snow collected. I don't know how they collected it and transported it, but he sent fruits and ice for Richard the Lionheart, to help him get better. And that is like his enemy. And when the Muslims, they took Jerusalem, when they took Al-Quds, Salahudin, he appointed Muslim soldiers, and the Christians, they were allowed to leave under Muslim guard. They were like Muslim soldiers on either side, that nobody can touch them. Salahudin, he guaranteed them the safe passage, that now you are all free to leave. And the Muslims, they were guarding them on either side, that nobody should touch them, because the ruler has guaranteed their safety. We've taken the city and they should be allowed to leave in peace. Also, we find that Salahudin, he was a very cultured individual, a very refined type of personality. For instance, he had memorized all the Arab lineages. He had memorized all the Arab lineages. Like all the Arab family trees, that this family comes from that tribe comes from that tribe comes. All of these tribes, he had memorized them, he knew of them. He knew their history, the history of the Arabs. Not only that, but he also knew the lineage of the Arab horses. He could tell you that which are the different types of Arab horses, and which are the different various breeds, and which horse is which type, and what is the strength of each type of horse, and so on and so forth. So you could see that he was aware of the things around him as well, relating to jihad and relating to the creation of Allah. in terms of, for example, the wonders of the world and the strange things of the world, he liked to, he was interested in those. He liked to know about those type of things as well. And there's no harm in doing that if a person, he does it with the intention of knowing about the creation of Allah and what the various type of things that Allah has created in the dunya to affect his iman. In terms of his attitude towards the worldly life, then he had what they call in Arabic as zuhud. And zuhud, the best translation of zuhud is indifference. Many people, they misunderstand zuhud. They think that zuhud means to be poor and to live in a poor way. That's not the meaning of zuhud. Zuhud means to be indifferent to it. Like Imam Ahmad, he was asked once that if somebody has something like 100,000 dirhams or dinars, can we say that he has got zuhud? If he's so rich, can we still say that he has got zuhud? That he has got indifference to the dunya? And Imam Ahmad said yes. If that money increases, he doesn't rejoice a lot, and if he loses that money, he doesn't grieve for it. It doesn't affect him. Then we can say that he has got zuhud. So you could be a millionaire, and tomorrow somebody phones you and tells you, okay, your business transaction was successful and you've made another million. And if you are a person of zuhud, you will just say, okay, alhamdulillah, no big deal. And the next day somebody rings you and says, oh, we've had a major failure in all the businesses and you've lost all your millions. Says, okay, alhamdulillah, Allah has decreed that for me, no problem. That is the example of someone who has zuhud. He could be a billionaire, but his attitude is like that. And at the same time, you might have someone who's poor, who might just have, 10, 15 pounds in his pocket, but even if he loses 10 pence of that, he becomes really sad and upset. Oh, I lost 10 pence, And at the same time, if he gets £1 from somewhere, he becomes really happy and rejoices. So it's possible for a rich person to have zuhud and a poor person not to have zuhud. And once, some people in Damascus, they built a beautiful house for Salahudin. Beautiful house. They said, Salahudin, he will live in this house. Beautiful house. So Salahudin, he came, when they came, they said, come and see the house that we've built for you because we want you to live in this house. He came, he just looked quickly at the house. He didn't stare at it for a long time. He just came, he just gave a little glance to it, and then he just said to the people that I will never live in this house. I will never sit in this house. And the people, they were astonished because they had specially built this house for him. They thought he's going to come, he's going to, praise the house, he's going to be happy that he can live in this house. He just took a quick look at it and he said, I don't want to live in this house. And he said, because this type of house is not for the person who is seeking the death. And we are here in the service of Allah. I'm a person who is seeking death, and this type of house, it might affect my desire for death. And I'm here in this dunya as someone who is in the service of Allah. And also one of his famous statements is that he used to say that in front of my eyes, or in my opinion, gold and turab, which is dirt or dust, is the same. Now you might think that, okay, alright, it might be a fancy statement, but what's the big deal that gold and turab is the same? It's a nonsensical statement. How can you say that in your opinion, money and this soil outside in the forest is the same for you? But what did he mean? But if you listen to his reason, then you will understand that it's the correct reason. He said, in my opinion, gold and dirt has the same value as long as the man will leave the gold and become dirt. That's what he meant. As long as we will all leave our gold and become dirt, this gold has got no value for me. Okay? Because when will this gold not become dirt? In the akhirah. That's the only time when the gold you will have there will stay gold forever. But in this dunya, even if you have tons and tons and tons of gold, one day you will leave that gold and you will become dirt. And he said, as long as this will be the situation, in other words, as long as I'm in the dunya, gold and dirt is the same thing for me. When he died, they say that the money that was left in his treasures, in his own personal treasures, you couldn't even pay zakat on it. It didn't even reach the nisab. In Sharia, you have to have a certain amount of money before zakat is even obligatory on you. And it is said that Salahudin, as the ruler of the Muslims, he did not have enough money himself. They didn't find enough money on which